Okay, we are ready to roll. Nice people. Let's see, we all gathered? Good. So we're in the right place. It's Sunday for not Tuesday. Here we are. And we're going to do a double session. We're going to go for about an hour and 15, take a break, and then come back for the second session. Okay? You need the handouts, you need a pen, and you need some good energy. So let's just check in here on our 1 to 10. Give me a number here. Well, energy wise, how are we doing? How present are we? 7, 8, 10, 10. I see a bunch of them. Okay, so those people who are 10s, 9, 10, spread your good energy. Spread your good energy. A lot of familiar faces, some new faces here. Welcome, Jeffrey. Welcome, Bonnie, an old friend we're seeing for the first time here. Welcome, Pam. Good to see you from Greenwich. Good to see you. Just about everyone else has been on some of the Rav Kook series that we've been running. We're just finished our 4th series. We'll be starting our 5th series next week on self-improvement, another bombshell. And we're going to jump in. Okay. And just to refocus us, we're learning Rav Kook. You know, I wrote today when I was doing a little writing, I wrote today that Rav Kook loved God. There's this old joke of Moshe and Shmuel. That Shmuel goes to shul to talk to God, and Moshe goes to shul to talk to Shmuel, right? So that's me and Rav Kook. Rav Kook was in love with God, and I am in love with Rav Kook. Okay, no offense to my dear wife, Sandra, who is always my first love. But Rav Kook's a little competition, tough competition. And one of the reasons, look, I appreciate the great Jewish thinkers. I appreciate, you know, the Mishnah and the Talmud and I the learning and the Rambam and Rav Soloveitchik and so many great thinkers. I appreciate them. I learn them. I feel close to them, but I only love Rav Kook. And one of the reasons is that Rav Kook was the one who wrote from his heart. Okay? We just have to remind ourselves when we begin. We're studying Rav Kook's private diaries that he wrote, you know, at midnight. We'll talk more about that in the second session. But he wrote from his heart, which is a very unusual thing for a rabbi to do. And we talk a lot about harmonic vibrations. We'll talk more about that today, how the vibrations, the energy we send out evokes a similar energy in the people around us. And so when Rav Kook writes from love, that evokes my love string, right? My love chord. So that's that. I would like all of us to, as we start, open your hearts to learn together. So we're starting with hope and optimism. Rav Kook talked a lot about hope and optimism. And one of the reasons I wanted to talk about this today, especially, we're at the end of 2020, and it's been a hard year. It's been a challenging year. And when 2030 and 40 and 50 and 60 roll around, and we talk about our lives, one of the things we'll say is 2020, that was different. That was different from every year that, give me a sign of life. Yeah, that was different from every year that came before. My mother, God bless her soul, is 90 years old. And she says, like, this year, you know, I lived through the World War II. This is a completely different kind of year. And it's a year that I think is especially conducive to despair, to getting down, to just, oof, another lockdown, more bad news and more bad news. And Rav Kook lived through a lot of hard times. And yet he writes about hope and optimism. So I want to draw some hope and optimism from him. And I always start with the bottom line, just in case you daydream, you flake out, you multitask me on your phone, which I'm sure nobody in this group would ever do to me. But just in case, right? The bottom line is this. There's a lot of external noise in the world. You want external noise? Put on the news. We have to listen to the news, but it's external noise. There's a lot of noise, and it eclipses an unheard symphony that is always playing in the soul of the universe. That's the bottom line. We draw hope and optimism when we listen to the inner melody that's happening in the universe. And I don't know anything about music. I'm not a musician. Some of you are musicians here. But when I write and I learn, I always put on music. So today I put on, I usually put on Beethoven, but for some reason today I put on Dvorak's, what is his famous one? Symphony, something, whatever. And I was watching, what is it?
New World Symphony.
The New World Symphony. And I was watching the musicians play for a moment. And I really got the sense that they were not creating music, that they were actually evoking music. They were channeling music. They were just, as we say, a vehicle for the music. They were not, it was not about themselves. You saw they were like, they almost disappeared in creating these sounds. And there's a music in the universe that we draw from. And that's what we have to do. The noise can deflate us and despair us. So let's jump in and see what Rav Kook has to say. Okay? Source number 1. It's short. Tikva v'ratzon, zeu yisod ha'chaim haruchanim, shemidgalim ba'adam. Hope and desire is the basis of spiritual life. That's an astonishing statement, I think, in its purity, in its simplicity. Hope. Hope is one of the bases of spiritual life. Hope is a spiritual thing. Some of you have heard already, I quoted Rabbi Jonathan Sachs of blessed memory, and he says an amazing thing. We just had Hanukkah. And in Hanukkah, the Greeks, the Greek culture, they were on top of the world. They had Greek philosophy, Greek art, Greek science, Greek poetry, Greek power. They were on top of the world. And yet, what do we remember the Greeks for? The Greek tragedy. The Greek tragedy, it's a bitui, it's a cliche, it's Greek tragedy. It ends in tragedy. Everybody dies in the end. Everybody dies tragically. And they were on top. And we Jews, we were on the bottom. We didn't have power. We didn't have autonomy. We didn't have anything. And what do we remember for? Hatikva, right? Hatikva, the hope. Next year in Jerusalem. Next year it's going to be better. There's no proof that's, can you imagine your great-great-great-grandparents in Minsk or Pinsk or whatever shtetl they were in, and they were saying, next year in Jerusalem? There was no chance they were going to get to Jerusalem. Zero chance, and they did not make it. And they were saying next year in Jerusalem from their hearts. How is this possible? How is this possible to have this hope? Hope is a spiritual basis. What does that mean? That means if you really want to be a spiritual being, you have to have hope. Hope, look, I don't know if there are any scientists in this group here or any logicians, but there is nothing empirical. There's no factual data to say that tomorrow is going to be better. Right? Give me a sign of life. There is no proof. There is no fact. There's no way reason to think tomorrow will be better. We like to say, yeah, Tov, it'll be better. But there's no basis for that. It's, when things are lousy, things can spiral out of control. And next year is going to be better on why? Why should anybody think that unless they're like this very Pollyannish, simplistic kind of spirit? That was not Rav Kook. We're not talking Pollyanna here. Why on earth should I have hope? Why should I think next year is going to be better? There's no empirical basis for it. That whole idea that tomorrow or next year is going to be better is spiritual. It's a faith issue. And for us, it's core. And some of you have heard me say this again, but I have to say it really strong. We are proud of our past. We have 3,000 years in Judaism. We got 3,000 plus years. That's a lot. We got a lot to be proud of. But the ikar, the essence of Judaism, is not to embrace our past. It's not even, as they say in the spiritual language today, to embrace the moment and be fully present in the moment. The essence of being a Jew is to fully embrace our future. Where are we going? To be fully present, not just in the present, but in the future. That's counterintuitive. How can I? That's where we live. Where are you going? What do you want? What do you aspire for? Or we would say, what are you dreaming for? We are a function of our dreams. Viktor Frankl said this in his psychology, logotherapy. And he saw this, if you're not dreaming and yearning for something and have some meaning in your life, you're going to die. You're going to dissipate. So we are a function of our future. We are a function of our hope. We are a function of our hope. We are hopers. Look, when God said to Abraham in the very beginning, Lech lecha, and go, God said to Abraham, you're going to be a great nation. I'm going to make you a great nation. Nice. But if we stop to reflect for a moment, how long does it take to become a great nation? Well, it took us 7 generations. Now, Helene just had her second grandchild. Wonderful. We have a bunch of grandkids, one. And but I really, really doubt if Sandra and I are going to live to see the grandchildren of our grandchildren. It's just 6 generations. We're not going to see that. So when God said to Abraham, I'm going to make you a great nation, Abraham went on his journey, listen carefully, knowing there was no possibility, 0 possibility of him ever seeing the fruits of what he's doing today. In other words, he was living entirely in the future, and his present was entirely based on the future, and that's a spiritual person. I'm not limited and caged by time and place. I'm not limited. We're living in the future. So let's go on. Let's go on. And I want to ask you a question. Just think for yourself. This is a rhetorical question, but think for yourself. Who is the person in your life that evokes your hope? Who is the person, and write it down. Who is the person in your life who gives you optimism? Who is the one? Because that person is your spiritual friend. The person who gives you hope is your spiritual friend. The person, and we say this all the time, Sandra and I say it as parents. It's not just to say, I love you to our kids. It's to say, I believe in you. I believe in you. You are good. I believe in your future. So think about who are you? Who do you evoke hope for? Who do you believe in? Who are you a spiritual friend for? That's something important to reflect on. Okay. Source number 2. Says our dear friend Rav Kook, the theory of evolution, and he wrote this 100 years ago when the theory of evolution was extremely problematic for a lot of religious people. What do you mean? It took millions of years to create the world, millions of years, 6 days. What do you mean millions of years? Says Rav Kook, the theory of evolution, which is presently conquering the world, is more in tune with the secrets of the Kabbalah than any other philosophical theory. Boing, bombshell. Everybody's afraid of it. He says, yeah, this is it. This is us. Evolution, which flows in the path of ascension, hitpatchut, developing, gives an optimistic foundation to the world. Oh, that's key here. Evolution is the optimistic foundation of the world. Because how can one despair when one sees that everything is evolving and transcending? Everything is going on. How can you be upset? Evolution tells you otherwise. This is beautiful. He's drawing from science, and he's drawing from, a difficult idea. And when we penetrate to the inner essence of ascending development, of evolution, we discover a divine quality, which we can absolutely say reflects God in action. You can underline that. I love that. Reflects God in action. That's a bold statement. This is God. You want to see God? Evolution. God is generating a process of bringing to fruition every potential power in the world. Oh my God, there's a lot to unpack here. There's something in the world, listen carefully. It's not just that we are yearning for a better world. Listen carefully. It's not just that we are yearning for a better world. The world is yearning for a better world. Did you get that? The world is not just a box that we live in. It's not just a house. The world is alive. The world has a soul. The world has a pulse. And modern science and physics kind of echo this because, everything is in motion, in motion, in motion. The world is alive. And what is it trying to do? It's trying to take what is latent and let it emerge. What would a scientist say to this? What would a scientist say? Look, science has a theory of natural selection, of evolution, survival of the fittest, random mutation. I'm blessed to have a few family members who are scientists, MIT and others, and they're very involved in this. But science answers a different question. Science answers the question, how does this happen? And how does it happen? Random mutations, natural selection. But science does not answer the question, why does this happen? Why does this happen? Why should the world move toward increasing complexity? There's no logic in that. Science doesn't try to answer the question of why does it happen. It tries to explain how it happens. Rav Kook is going to why it happens. Why does it happen, says Rav Kook? It's easy. It's God in action. It's God in action. There's an unfolding process, right? There's an unfolding process to the world. And there's, like we say, there's an unfolding process to ourselves. There's a hidden pulse in the world, right? God, you know, often we look for God in our world. We see a beautiful flower, we see a birth, we see something happen, and we say, oh, sign of God. Rav Kook was seeing God in history as the whole scope of history unfolds, says was seeing Rav Kook. It's all unfolding. There's a yearning in the world to emerge, and that gives me hope in the future because there's a pulse in the world. Let's go on. Give me a sign of life. Are we good? Okay, source number 3. Divine faith, Emunah Elokit, Ba'ozav Godla, in its boldness and audacity, will always be the soul of all development, human and worldly. Our soul is part of the soul of this whole process. We're involved in this process. What does that mean? Here we go. Nature's divine melodic song is the raw material of the whole cosmos. Anyone who listens to its intimate reveries will make its songs his or her own song with all of the heart's pleasure. And this brings about an aliyah of the world, a rising up of the world. Take another look at that. Take another look. Nature's divine melodic song is the raw material of the whole cosmos. Anyone who listens to its intimate reveries will make its songs his or her own song with all of the heart's pleasure. B'chol oneg levav. This is our idea here. There is an inner music to the world. Give me a sign of life here. Have any of you ever felt this or sensed this, that there was an inner something in the world that the world was alive? The world wasn't just a blah, a stone. The world is alive. I think this transforms, this reframes what is the world, It's easy to think the world is a box, a house, and we inhabit that, right? But it doesn't do anything. Rav Kook says the whole solar plexus, the solar system, everything, the universe, the cosmos is alive. There's a pulse. There's nothing dead in the world. Everything has a soul. Everything has a soul. Anyone who listens to its intimate reveries will make his songs her own song and all of the heart's pleasure. So, Schubert had a thing called the Unfinished Symphony. He wrote a bit and then never finished it, the Unfinished Symphony. Rav Kook has the Unheard Symphony. The Unheard Symphony, there's a symphony playing and we're not, I think this somehow Rav Kook mystically heard. He sensed it. He felt it. He was part of it. And these are really the harmonic vibrations that we're always talking about. We're always talking about harmonic vibrations. If I'm happy, I evoke your smile. If I'm depressed, I may make you a little sadder. If I'm cynical, I may pluck your cynical string. That's what we talk about harmonic vibrations, the interactions we have, because we're energy, right? More than Arye is like a black vest and a white shirt, and I'm energy. I'm giving off energy, and you're sending out energy. So says Rav Kook, listen carefully. It's not just between two people. The world is sending us its energy. And if we listen, we feel it. And this is where spirituality begins, in the belief that there is an inner life to the world. Did you get that? Let me say it again. You can underline this. This is where spirituality begins, in the belief that there is an inner reality to this world. Give me a sign of life. Yeah? That, just like I have an inner reality, the world has an inner reality. And the goal, as we spoke about, of the Jewish people is to enable this inner reality to be the most beautiful music, to create the harmony and the harmony and the oneness of the music. That's our goal. Okay? Any questions so far? Comments or questions so far? Okay. So this, yeah, Barbara?
When you say the inner reality of the world, think of nature and that kind of reality. And then I wonder, can I overlay peoplehood on it? And it's seems to be a different inner reality.
There are many, put it like this, my soul, just like on a personal level, my soul wears a lot of clothes. It wears the clothes of, are you a father? Are you a teacher? Are you a neighbor? Are you a husband? I have many different clothes that dress my soul, that my soul is expressed in many different places, sometimes through being a teacher, sometimes through being a friend. My soul is expressed in different ways. The soul of the universe is also wears a lot of clothes. One of the natural clothes of the universe is nature. And in Hebrew, this is beautiful. What's the word for world in Hebrew? The word for world in Hebrew is olam. Olam, ayin vav lamed mem, olam. And the same word means hiddenness or to disappear, ne'elam. The world is hidden. That's anchored in Hebrew. The world is a hidden thing. The essence of the world is hidden. That's the soul of the world. So being a spiritual person is believing that. And then, as Rav Kook saying, the melody is evolving. And that gives root to my optimism. Okay, we're going to do one. Helene, jump in.
Is this resonating with what the Ramchal talks about Chomer v'tzura? Is the Chomer like this energy that you're talking about? And
Actually, the energy would be the tzura, would be the world, the physical world would be the chomer.
okay.
But it's yeah. It's in our language we would say body and soul, which is the same idea. Body and soul. There's a body of the world and there's a soul of the world. Okay, we're going to do one more source. It's kind of a weird one. It's kind of a whammy. So hang in there. Okay. Source number 4. Says Rav Kook. In order to fully love this world, one needs to immerse oneself very deeply in the love of Olam Haba, the world to come. Olam Haba is the Olam, that word I said, Olam, right? The world to come. And do everything necessary in this world to prepare individually and collectively for the life of Olam Haba, the world to come. And when despair fills the soul, and this world becomes loathsome, one of those days you just can't get out of bed, and everything seems dark, and it's all, what's it for? Then the love of Olam Haba will come. and give the dew of life to revive the life of this world, give you new life. And old and young together will look upon it and flock to it. And kings and ministers and warriors and heroes will find in it a life-giving source. What on earth is Rav Kook saying here? Is everybody as mystified as me? Like, what on earth is he talking about here? Well, first we have to kind of decipher, what is the world to come? Give me a sign of life. You've heard that expression before, Olam Haba? Olam Haba? So I think, the typical usual understanding of Olam Haba, the world to come, we understand it chronologically, usually, right? There's this world and there's the next world, right? Give me a sign of life. Yeah, the next world. After I die, after the Messiah comes, Techiyat Meitim, when the revival of the dead, and that, way distant thing, there's the world to come. I've got this present world and the world to come. Chronological. That's how often it is understood. That's not how Rav Kook understood it. Rav Kook understood the world to come, Olam Haba, properly translated as the world that is always coming. The world that is coming. Not that will come, but Olam Haba. It's actually a better translation. The world that is coming. What does that mean? The world that is coming. Haba, the world that is coming. Right now, there's a world that is coming. What is that world? That is the inner, better world coming into existence. If you look at me, what do you see? You say Aryeh. Aryeh. But you know what? There is an Aryeh 2.0. There's a better and improved, upgraded Aryeh. And that Aryeh, it's not waiting to emerge in 2, 5, 10 years. That Aryeh 2.0, the more kinder, passionate, giving, kinder, everything better Aryeh, that Aryeh exists when? Right now. It exists right now. But it's just within me. It hasn't emerged yet, right? It's waiting to be brought out. Give me a sign of life. Are you with me? Are you still alive here? You good? So just like Aryeh has a 2.0 that is not going to come out in 5 years, but is ready to come out right now if I just evoke it, so too the world has a world 2.0 that is inside. It's like an onion. The world is like an onion. There's an inner layer and an inner layer and an inner layer waiting to emerge. It's waiting to come out. And this is God in action, allowing the better world to come out. So on those hard, difficult, terrible days when, as Rav Kook says, despair fills the soul and this world becomes loathsome, says Rav Kook, don't be consumed by the noise. Don't be misled by the external layer of the world right now. Be part, listen carefully, of the process to evoke the inner, better world. Listen to the melody. Goodness is there. Goodness, actually, let me say it better. Betterness is there. It's there already. It just is waiting to grow. Sandra and I, a few weeks ago, we planted in the garden a lot of bulbs. And now, 4 weeks later, we're watching them come up. That's like the world. It's there. It's just covered up. And when I listen to the noise and everything that's going on, I can despair and become loathsome of the world. Says Rav Kook, there's an inner world. Listen to the notes of the symphony. It's already there. And to do that, I need emunah. To do that, I need belief. I need belief because there's no empirical proof that it's going to happen. That's my belief. And let me say it better. Why should I have this? Am I a fool to believe this? Am I a simpleton or a fool to believe this? This belief, chevre, nice people, is the anchor of Jewish wisdom. It began with Avraham. It goes through next year in Jerusalem. Hatikva. This is the anchor of Jewish belief. This is why, unlike the Greeks, we don't end in despair and tragedy. We always end with positivity. And for us, we're living in an incredible age. You know, maybe go back to your 100 years ago, 500 years ago. How did the Jews survive? Well, this was the belief. Next year, they were anchored in listening to the inner symphony of the world. Okay, nice people. It's, please take out a pen. Please take out a pen.
Oh yeah, could I say something?
Please, Peter, jump in.
Yeah, it's interesting. That the key word that really jumps out at me is the word revive. So in a sense, yes, here's the future, but as you pointed out with the metaphor of the bulb, to revive means to give it life again, revive, okay? So it's there, but it's not alive, and it's the dew, the wonderful image of the dew of life that gives a life to what's really here now. So in one hand, it's in the present moment, it's there, we just have to give it life. And the life that it gives will show up in what we call chronologically the future, in the sense of time, if we buy into that. So I thought that was very interesting, the word revive instead of give just
Beautiful.
life.
Beautiful. I love it, Peter. In Hebrew, it's very much that lahachayot, to give life, to give life. And it's not just to revive like somebody passed out and I bring them back to life. It's actually, I think, to give more life, to give more. Did you ever feel, did any of you ever feel for a moment or a period in your life that you were more alive? Give me a sign of life. Did you ever have a moment or a time in your life you felt you were more alive? Yeah, right? And there's probably something you do. I mean, for me, it's teaching, but for some of you, it might be music, it might be dance, it might be gardening. There's something you do that you feel more alive, right? Give me a sign of life. Yeah. Yeah. So that's what we're talking about doing for the world. We can actually give the world or acknowledge in the world more life. When we just listen to the news and get despair and depleted, Gewalt, oi, never. But when we listen to the soul of the universe, there's more life and we give it more life and we get more life. They say about Rav Kook that his eyes were captivating, his eyes. And I find that, because that's true with people. People who are really alive, it's in their eyes. I once had a student at Pardes whose father died suddenly. And he carried around with him, and you saw it in his face, this black cloud. He had a black cloud. He was, and then one day in the middle of class, he started crying. And he started crying uncontrollably, crying. Something he triggered, uncontrollably crying. And when he finished the crying, which took about 5 minutes, I'd never seen that happen before. When he finished the crying, his eyes were different. The cloud had lifted. We can be more alive. And says Rav Kook, that's part of the more we're in touch with the inner music of the world and believe in the future, we have an aliyah ourselves. Okay, nice people. Here's our first question. Are you ready? Question number 1. On a 1 to 10, what number would you give yourself on the hope optimism meter? 1 is no hope, 10 is super hope. On a typical day, what number would you give yourself on the hope optimism meter from 1 to 10? And write one sentence. Why did you give yourself, Dafka, that number? Question number 2. What do you think would be different about your life if you became more hopeful, more optimistic? What would be different about your life if you jumped up 2 numbers? You were a 7, now you're a 9. You were a 4, now you're a 6. What would be different about your life if you magically jumped up 2 numbers and you were more optimistic and you're hopeful in your daily life? What would be different? Question number 3. Okay, but we're all adults here and we've lived decades and decades and we're not there yet. So let's own it. What's holding us back? What is holding you back from being the higher number? What's your obstacle? What do you have to own and overcome? What is your obstacle to becoming a more optimistic and hopeful person? And finally, 4th question, always our 4th question. What piece of advice would you give to yourself to help you deepen your hope and optimism? What small practical piece of advice that you could actually, implement this week? What small piece of advice can you give to yourself? You know yourself better than anyone. What piece of advice would you give to yourself to help you grow in your hope and optimism? Wouldn't it be nice if we were all 9.9? Wouldn't that be nice? If we could just shed that despair, that depletion, that darkness, wouldn't that be nice? And again, I think that was Rav Kook. I mean, during World War I, the war to end all wars, where Rav Kook got stranded in Switzerland for 3 years. He couldn't get back. He was stuck by himself. He wrote an amazing line. He wrote, the bigger the war it is, the more it wakes up, stirs, and arouses the feet of the Messiah. Are you kidding me? During World War I, during all the horror and bloodshed? Yeah. Something great is happening. So this is our hope here. Now, what are we going to do, nice people? For those of you who've been here before, for our new people, welcome, welcome. We're going to go to breakout rooms for 10 minutes. How is that going to work? Yoshua is going to divide us into rooms. These are the rules. This is the most important part. These are the rules of the breakout room. Confidentiality, good listening. No checking your phones for 10 minutes. Clear your soul away and be there for each other. It's the greatest chesed you can do for anybody, the greatest kindness to listen. No judging anybody, no attacking, nobody dominating and speaking for the whole 10 minutes. And listen, we learn so much from each other, and it's not real. What Aryeh has done so far is not real. I've just talked for 30 minutes, but it only becomes real when you guys talk. Nobody's ever changed by being passive. So what are you talking about? Well, you just wrote, you just reflected. So anything that you want, what this has brought up for you, the piece of advice, the obstacle, what it evokes in you, listen to each other, share. We learn a lot from each other. There's a lot of wisdom in this group. So we're going to breakout rooms. One piece of caution: if you get to your room, Don't freak out in the first 5 seconds that you're alone. Computers work on different schedules. So just hang in there, wait, you're going to be joined. Don't freak out. Oh my God, nobody's coming to my party. Okay? Are we good? We're good? Okay, let's go to breakout rooms. Then we'll come back for questions and comments and everything else. Welcome back, nice people. Give me a sign of life. How was your breakout room? Good stuff, huh? Nice people. What more do you want in the world? Discussing Rav Kook with such nice people. I mean, really? What you talk about Olam Haba? You just tasted it. You just tasted the world to come, the world that is coming. You know, the better world. Really. Okay. So I was talking with Yeshua during break, and I'll just mention this idea, and then we'll jump in. And anyone who has questions, comments, thoughts, love to hear. It's an interesting thing, you know, we're moving toward the end of this calendar year. But we know we live actually not according to a Jewish calendar, a Christian calendar. And there was a rabbi who pointed out an interesting thing, that the Christian calendar begins on January 1st and ends on January 1st. It starts in darkness and it ends in darkness. And the Christian day starts at midnight and ends at midnight. Starts in darkness and ends in darkness. And it's just interesting to note, I don't know how meaningful it is, but it's interesting to observe that the Jewish calendar is different. We start the year, Rosh Hashanah, in the fall, going into darkness, but it goes into darkness and it comes out to the summer. And the day we start at sunset, we go into darkness, and then we come into the day. So I think this kind of hopefulness is perhaps built into our calendar. That we go in, you know, it's like we go into the darkness to come out to light. You know, it's kind of like a pregnancy. You go inside and then there's a birth of something, the birth of the day, the birth of light. And this is just something that's embedded. You know, it's embedded in our music, it's embedded in our sense of humor. And it's a challenge. Let me just say, it's a challenge. When somebody has health issues, financial issues, relationship issues, you know, I mean, it's hard to be optimistic and hopeful. They say your scope of vision is only as big as your toe when you bruise your big toe against the wall. You can only see your toe, you know, like it's hard when things happen to us that are difficult. And part of being a spiritual personality is somehow transcending that and getting a sense of something emerging here. So let's open it up here to you nice people. Questions, comments, observations. What did this bring up for you? Let's hear from you all. You can unmute yourself and just identify yourself, give us your name and jump in.
So, hi, it's Jeffrey speaking. You know, the noise thing has me a little troubled. Because when we talk about it as being noise, it doesn't mean it's not reality. So you know, the idea, I assume, is not to ignore the noise. In this case, the pain, the suffering of those people who aren't getting the medical care they should for COVID, and those people who aren't getting, don't have jobs, don't have food, et cetera. All that noise is real noise. So the idea isn't that we ignore it. It's not like, okay, I have faith, it's going to be fine. Everything is for the good. So, you know, I was grappling with that in our breakout group. I talked about maybe channeling that into a way that one can take action and maybe turn that noise into harmonious melody as you're talking about. But boy, that's the challenge, right?
Look, Jeffrey, this is, thank you so much. This is a very important point here. This is very, life, the journey of life has a lot of bumps in the road. And when I'm in a bump, I should embrace that bump. As one of our Rebbes, Brene Brown, you should get to know Brene Brown and listen to her TED Talks. She has this wonderful line, embrace the suck. When something bad happens, don't just give me a glib, oh, you know, it's all fine, it's all good. No, when something bad happens, embrace it, be in it, right? Right. But what we're talking about is perspective, right? Well, I've been married for almost 40 years. And if it ever were to happen that Sandra and I would hit a bump and we would have, I don't know, I forgot to do something or I did something I didn't do. Okay, as husbands are wont to do, as I've tried to convey to Sandra over 40 years, you have to continually lower your expectations, right? So if if we hit a bump, fine. That was a bump that really happened. It happened today. It has to be processed and discussed and everything. But it should be in the scope of the 40 years of relationship. Don't let today's news eclipse everything else. Jeffrey, what you're saying is yes, today's noise is real. Be focused, be present in it, be aware of it, be super attuned to it, and don't let it consume your whole life and let you not see the scope of the bigger picture. I mean, I'm living in Israel now. So we've had ups and downs. We've had better governments and worse governments and all kinds of bumps in the road. But how can anybody live in Israel and not appreciate the miracle after 2,000 years, right? I mean, let's put a scope of history on it. And let's put a scope of 3,000 years on it. Abraham and Sarah coming to creating this great nation and who we are today. So that all we're saying is I have to be myopic. I have to really be focused on today. And I have to have panorama, live in the history. And the history is the past and especially the future. That's what we're saying. Okay, so I really appreciate your insight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Who's up? Comments, questions, nice people. Peter,
Yeah.
jump in.
REA is a very good topic, an interesting breakout. And what became clear for me in the breakout was the danger of hope being experienced as an expectation. And that's the way I want it to turn out. And so in the Buddhist sense, when you have an expectation, that's a setup for your getting upset, okay? Rather, I see hope as a place, a way of self-expression of the love in the moment into the world. And the way it's going to turn out is the way it's going to turn out. And to stay in the center, connected to God, connected to peace, connected to loving kindness. Do you understand what I'm saying? In other words, if I might, for example, people in my family watch MSNBC and they get so upset, like for 4 years, what's going to happen in the election? Well, I want a certain turnout, but I'm not attached to it, because if it turned out differently, I'd have to stay loving, kind through that. So there's a distinction that's important to be made around hope.
Peter, thank you very much. I appreciate your insight. I'm gonna offer a little pushback. Okay, I'm gonna offer a little pushback.
Good.
Because we really don't want detachment. We want attachment. Now, I know in the Buddhist world, as you said, that can breed suffering. But we in the Jewish world, we say that's a price I'm willing to share. That's a price I'm willing to bear. I'm going to bring kids into this world and completely love them, knowing, one day Ad Me'ev Esrim, they're going to die. I'm going to completely love my wife, knowing that it's not going to last forever. I'm willing to pay the price of sadness because I want to be fully attached to this world. And we can, this, we would say in the Jewish world, is courage. This is the courage to really go all in. Anybody know that poker term? I'm all in. Jews, we are all in life. Even with our past of bumps in the road and all kinds of tragedies and calamities, we want to be attached. We want to be fully attached. And that's hard. I mean, one of the things I stand in awe of Rav Kook is his vulnerability to be fully attached. I mean, I find that really hard to do. I'm speaking to you now, but I don't know if I'm living it. It's really hard to be fully attached and say, I love you so much. I don't know what I would do without you. And I'm all like, I don't know if I can say that. I don't know if I can live that.
But the
That's a
word-
very deep emotional all in, but that's what we want. This is the gift of world. The world, God gave us this beautiful world. That's who we hold. God gave us this incredibly beautiful world with colors and sky and beauty in nature and tastes and food and smells. God gave us this to fully embrace it and appreciate it and say, wow, I'm so grateful for this, God, for this gift. I'm so grateful for this gift, for this music and this art and this world and this love. I'm so grateful. And attachment is this gratitude and the love. And we know it's fleeting. Yes, we know it's fleeting. But we want to be, not to be fully attached in a certain sense is not to be grateful for the infinite beauty that God has given us. So we want to really be courageous to go all in. I mean, I wish I could show you here. I'm going to show you something. You see this? 1 second. Here. My hibiscus. Do you see this flower? I'll tell you something about the hibiscus. It blooms for 24 hours. It's got 1 day. It's got 1 day. Wouldn't you like to know what the soul of the hibiscus says? I'm born to die. I got 1 day. Am I going to enjoy it or am I afraid of dying? Am I just blossoming and I'm so afraid I'm going to fall to the floor tomorrow? Am I terrified or am I going to enjoy my day? We are like a hibiscus. Hopefully we got, 80, 90, 120 years. But we're kind of like a hibiscus. So what am I going to do? I hope we fully blossom and fully enjoy it and fully embrace it. And I think Rav Kook's idea of optimism is a great thing because I come back to it. There's no reason to be optimistic. Why should tomorrow be better? Am I an idiot? Why should tomorrow be better? I can't prove it. I can't. No history has proven that tomorrow's going to be better. And we believe it because there's the melody to the universe that is always getting sweeter. And it's just a belief. It's emunah. Is that okay, Peter? Is it okay for me to?
No, I love the pushback. This is the kind of dialogue that I love. Why I come here. Without the pushback, it's just reading experience. Now I don't see it the same way, and because I think it's a definition of terms that we get stuck in the language. To me, embracing, yes. Attachment, no.
Okay.
And I was going to say the same thing, that that it's a matter of definition of what attachment is and to what. Because if I'm attached to, I really want a huge house. Well, no, I would go the Buddhist way on that and say, I do not want to be attached because if I don't get a big house, I'll be disappointed. So, and I can see what you're saying as far as, we want to be attached as Jews and to hope and the soul. So I don't know if it's the different definitions.
Okay. Thank you. I hear it. Thank you. Connie, you want to jump in there? You're on mute.
Thank you. So I think that the way some people think about attachment is close to something called something that I would just call expectation. And my motto is expect the unexpected. I just try to be open for that. Yeah, I think that's all. That's all.
Thank you. Marianne, and then we'll move toward closing.
I've got
Go
two
ahead.
quickies. One is that I have the Marion Bell theory. If you expect the worst, then anything better is going to be great. People know me for this theory. And the other thing is noise blowers from leaf blowers. I'm thinking the universe invented those to really get us while we're walking down the street looking for nature, to get focused into our inner being. And you don't know what day of the week you're going to get a leaf blower coming down your left side of your house, your right, and it's like there to destroy the calmness of my world.
Right.
So I kind of, when you said that analogy, I just immediately saw the leaf blower that, you know, I want to just take a hatchet. And
I
then I
get it.
have to remember that there's a flower, there's a leaf, there's a bird somewhere to get me back to me.
Right. Beautiful. Well, let me just say another word about this noise, and then one more writing thing. Most of my noise is internal. Most of my noise is internal. It's stuff going on in my head and stuff and stuff and stuff. And it consumes me and it distracts me and doesn't let me see the large picture. So there's the leaf blower, and there's, as Jeff said, all the stuff going on in the world. But I have a lot of inner noise that also precludes my hearing something much deeper and bigger too. And that I'm really in control of, that I have to work on. Okay, nice people. One last question. Got a pen? We spent a nice hour together. Here's the question. What are you taking away from this hour? What is your takeaway? What is a bullet point for yourself that you can take away from our time together? And would anyone like to share? Anyone who perhaps hasn't spoken yet today? We learn a lot from each other, and everybody hears something different. Pam, so nice to hear from you. What is?
Well, I think I'm walking away with two things: that hope is a choice, or being hopeful is a choice, and it also requires a great deal of effort. Right? I don't think. I mean, I think there are people who are naturally optimistic and hopeful, and people who are naturally maybe a little darker, but I just feel like it's something you have to choose to do and something you have to work at.
Thank you so much for that. Thank you so much. Beautiful. Leslie?
Two things. One is, I just want to say I love this understanding of Rav Kook, of the world that is coming. That to me, as opposed to the world to come, that to me is huge. It's a huge shift. And it generates a lot more natural enthusiasm and reason to act. There's something much, if it could be in 5 minutes or in 10 minutes or tomorrow, it's close. It's at the tip of my tongue. It's something I feel like I might get close to, that I might live to. Whereas the world yet to come is, I have no sense of that on this plane. So I just wanted to, I really appreciate that. And that's a really good shift for me. And it takes down some obstacles for me. And the second part is, I really liked when you said the process, be part of the process to evoke an inner better world. Betterness is waiting to grow. And the sense of the feeling of more aliveness. If I take away anything, my takeaway is, how can I make this moment, this interaction, this exchange more alive? How can I bring better aliveness, more aliveness to it? In evoking it from others, in allowing it to come out myself. I mean, one of the things I noticed in the question 3, what's holding me back? One of the things is laziness. One of the things is that it takes energy, as Pam was saying, it takes energy to be engaged, just like it takes energy to run a mile. It takes energy to be spiritual. And I know, because when my father passed away, the depth of my grief was equal to my love for him, if not I keep thinking, if the depth, if the energy that I put into loving the world and engaging and making it better can at some point be equalized in the rest of the world, that's something. That's just something. So anyway, thanks for all those triggers.
Thank you. Thank you, Leslie, a lot. Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, Helene, and then we'll wrap up. Go ahead.
No, I
Helene.
know we got to wrap up, but I want to piggyback on what Leslie Ann said. We also talked a lot about grief in our breakout room, but what you said in the way that you interpreted Arya was that this whole thing about not the next world out there that we can't feel it, but the world coming in. For me, the takeaway is this whole new sense of kavanah. Like there's a whole new direction, and like my compass shifted. It's like, oh, the compass is turning every day with this new world, this olam haba coming towards us, or as Hani said so beautifully, the becoming is that my kavanah is shifting. It's a much more, I don't have the right word, but I feel more connected to the kavanah of where this world of coming is coming. All right, I'm rambling. Thank you.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. Nancy, and then I'll close. Go ahead.
Thank you. I had, as you were talking, Helene, I had this image of just shimmering light. And I keep sort of the kavanah I take away with me is that it's that shimmering light that holds the becomingness and the possibility for the new isness, so to speak, because to notice into already shifts what something was in a static state.
Wow.
So it has something to do with the quality of noticing. And that's the aliveness you're talking about, Leslie Ann. Because it all starts to shimmer for me. That's the only word I can bring to it.
Thank you, Nancy, our resident artist. Thank you. Beautiful. I love what you said. You give us so much. You enrich it and deepen our experience so much to hear you all. Nice people. We're going to stop here. You have a second different email with a Zoom invitation for part 2. We're going to start at quarter of, like in 20 minutes, 25 minutes, a quarter of, whatever that is in your time zone. Okay. And it's really the sweetest of the sweet. I mean, Rav Kook's poetry, it's the sweetest of the sweet. It's so looking forward, print it out and take a break, and we'll see you in about 25 minutes. Okay? Great. So I'm going to close this. Be well.
Mm.